to think of yourself as a human being and the needs that we have. And once you understand the makeup of who you are, and you begin to assess what are the things you need in life, you begin to see why we sometimes fall out of balance or look for love in the wrong places. In the beginning, Anta Insaan, you are Insaan. And the word Insaan comes from this concept of Nisyan. You're very forgetful. Tansa. You forget your place with Allah. You forget the rights you owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You forget how your place is in society. You forget the obligations you owe to others and the dealings you have with other people. You are habitual in losing track of what it is that is essential for your well-being. So you are an insan, you have this capacity of making mistakes, forgetting your place with Allah and with others. The second part is anta kain, you are a conglomerate of things. And when the philosophers of Islam, when the thinkers of Islam, Ibn al-Qayyim and others, Al-Ghazali and others, they begin to talk about who you and I are, they say we're made up of three components. You are three different things that when they're put together, they make you separate to any other creation of Allah. It's what makes you different to the angels, it makes you different to the jinn, it makes you different to the animals. The first part of you and I is physical. And that physicality of you being made of raw materials, you know, the leather that I sit on this chair, the mortar that holds up this building, the water that's in front of me in that jug, that's me and that's you. 70% of me and you is water, hydrogens and oxygens. You have a very physical presence, and Allah says, "Minha khalaqnakum." From this earth they were created. وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُهُمْ. And to it you will be entombed. You will become back as a part of the dust that you were initially created from. And therefore, when you begin to understand that, hold on a second, I have a physical nature just like many other things here. The plants and the trees and the balance that we have with the society, we're not very different. And that's why whenever Allah gives to us an illusion of life and death, He talks about plants. He says, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا كَمَاءٍ أَنْزَلْنَاهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. If you want to give them the example of what it is, this whole worldly life is, what their existence is like, point them to the trees and the leaves, that when rain falls, it's soaked up in the earth. And the plant gains in strength, it turns green and flourishes and fruits, but eventually it dies and returns back, and the leaves fall and become part of the nutrient cycle that strengthen the tree and strengthen the life process once again. You are a very physical person. You know, between you and I, the genetics that we share with some of the other animate life. You know, when they first began experimenting with heart surgery, and people had faulty valves, you know, your heart, it would seep blood. Some people that have a congenital heart disease, the valve that you keep, once the heart has pumped, blood shouldn't come back from the same way. Some people, that valve isn't strong enough. So they said, look, if we could only just find another human valve. Okay, well, we can't take someone else's heart, we can't take someone else's healthy valves. How about we take it from something similar, genetically similar, that if we put it in the human being, the body won't repel it. What do you think the closest genetic, created physical being was to you and I? It was a swine. The first heart surgeries, they would take the valve out of a pig's heart. It's the same size, same kind of weight, does the same functions, has the same chambers, everything's the same as yours. If you were to, you know, for you, those of you who did biology, I'm sure in year 11 or whatever, you were slicing over pig's heart, right? Why? Because it looks exactly like a human heart. They took that valve out, stuck it in a human being, give them a little bit of drugs so that it doesn't reject it, doesn't find it foreign, and people live 10, 15, 20 years. 99% of you genetically is that of a swine, is that of an ape. You're not that very different from a lot of the animate life, but there's something that exceeds. And second to you being not just simply physical, you've been given aql. You've been given a rationale and an intellect. You're a thinker. Not many of some of the sisters would debate that and say, really, brother? Are you sure they're thinkers? Well, not all of them. Some of them. Some of us are thinkers. We have a rationale. We have a concept. We can come to deduce right and wrong. We have intuition. We have thought processes. We have hopes and dreams, and our mind thinks. And one of the maqasid of the Sharia, of the aims of the Sharia that was descended to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout time, was to protect al-aql. The reason inebriation and alcoholism and intoxicants are forbidden is because it limits your ability to rationalize. It lowers your mental faculties. Therefore, it is sinful. It doesn't matter whatever other health values. And Allah says that yes, there could be good benefit in that intoxicating thing. وَلَكِنْ إِثْمُهُ أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِ. But its harm is much greater than whatever good you can find in it. And therefore the mind becomes a very important part of you and I as human beings. It's one of the things that Allah addresses in the Quran. Allah says, Ulul Albab. The people who reflect. Ulul Nuha. Look at, that word, Ulul Nuha. Nuha, it comes from the same word that means nahi. Don't do it. Nuha means your mind tells you, don't do that. It doesn't have to be inspired to you. It doesn't have to be like Allah said in the Quran. Your mind, you looked at something and said, my nuha, my inner self says I shouldn't do that. Even though I haven't heard something from the Prophet ﷺ or read something from the Quran, I'm compelled to believe this is not right. I should not do that. لِأُولِي النُّهَى, those of consciousness. There's a difference between khawf and khashya. Not just those who are afraid, it's an irrational fear. Khawf, you're just, I'm scared, I don't know why. But khashya, الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ. Yakhshawn means that they're fearful because they thought of why I should fear Allah in that capacity. Rationale. You become intuitive towards others. The third part of you, because animals also have levels of rationale. Monkeys, they're very empathetic. All of us have been forwarded one of those, YouTube videos or Facebook posts where, a puppy dies and its best friend, the other puppy, just sits with him, and it's, they're very empathetic to one another. They think of one another. Animals will feed one another, right? They will care for one another. They think about one another. Animals identify right and wrong. And one of the videos we'll watch tomorrow is Chipukan monkeys, where one of them is offered something and the other one isn't, and they feel a sense of injustice and indignity. And Allah quotes animals in the Quran. Like Allah Rabbul Izzah, Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Qayyim, he says, of the greatest, signs of Allah's interest in His creation is that Allah quotes an ant. There's a chapter in the Quran called An-Naml, and Allah says, قَالَتْ نَمْلَةٌ. The ant spoke and said. Allah quotes an ant that it spoke to its host and other parts of its creation. Ya ayyuhan namlu udkhulu masakinakum, run to your homes. Sulaiman and his army is coming. La yahtimannakum wa hum la yash'urun. They might trample you and they don't know any better. And Ibn al-Qayyim, he writes, that the ant uses 11, that one ayah, 11 forms of speech. It gives orders, it has recognition. The ant knows who it is, it knows his name. And it doesn't just know him, but it knows his soldiers. And it doesn't just say, there's these, people walking. It says that they're his soldiers. It identifies you. And after writing all that, Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Qayyim says, so the one who can't give sadaqah to human beings because he's poor, let him take some sugar and put it for an ant. Allahu Akbar. Umamun amthalukum. Allah says, they are nations just like your nation. So we have rationale, but other creations have rationale. What separates us from the animals and pushes us further is that there's a third part to you, which is a ruh. You have a soul. It's not just I think, and it's not just I feel, and I have senses, but I have a soul. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, and they would question the Prophet about the soul. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, say the soul is from the concern of my Lord. وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, only Allah knows its trueness, and you have been given but little amounts of knowledge, that even if it was to be discussed with you and described to you, you would not be able to conceptualize and understand it in the completeness of its gravity that has been shared, that has been held back from Allah, that hasn't been shared with us. And the soul is powerful. The soul can bring relief and comfort. And the soul can bring injury and discomfort, not just to yourself but to others. You know, when you study things that relate to hasad, what is envy? What is the evil eye? It's that your soul reaches beyond your physicality and harms another person physically. You know, subhanAllah, that your soul has an energy that it can inflict harm on others. Your eyes extend, the soul extends past it. And the soul is that connection between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. And one of the last parts of the moments of your life is that your physical body and the soul are intertwined. And that when it leaves, Ibn al-Qayyim, he talks, what's important about you as a human being? Is it your mind or your body or your soul? He says it's the soul, because once the soul leaves, everything else is worthless. There's no more thinking, there's no more physicality, you're nothing. It's that soul that becomes really, really important. And on the day of judgment, it's the animals that will turn to dust because they don't have a soul that's accountable to Allah. So what do the three components of you as a human being mean? Why is that so important when it concerns love? Well, it's very simple, and we end on this so we can get ready for the Maghrib prayers, inshaAllah. Very, very simply, each and every one of them wants different things. You might crave someone physically. You looked at some, but your mind is telling you they're horrible. Right? Astaghfirullah, they're the wrong person. But there's a physical attraction. And that physical attraction is with the five senses. We're going to talk about it after the salah. There's sight and sound and smell and pheromones and all that kind of stuff. It's physical. The second aspect of it, you might not be attracted to someone physically, but there's a psychological connection. There's an emotional connection. And that's why you find that, one of the strange things about today is that people fall in love on the internet. They've never met. Sometimes they haven't even seen each other in real life. Like they were just SMSing and chatting and, I love him. I'll leave my husband for him. Right? Millions of people. Right? Al-Azhar, issued a fatwa that Facebook is haram. Not because Facebook in and of itself is haram. But because in the first year that Facebook entered into Egyptian society, there were 700 divorces registered. 700,000 divorces. In the first year, nearly 1 million households disintegrated. And every time, in every one of the court cases, in every one of the reasons, the word Facebook showed up. I saw this person from high school, we hadn't met, everything. So Azhar said, Facebook haram, right? It's that reflex reaction, and they stood by it, and they still stand by it. The position of Al-Azhar at the moment, of Majma' al-Fatwa, is that. So we'll pause for Salatul Maghrib. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika.